Again. My experiment may have been a dismal failure. I thought everyone would rush back in 5 minutes, but I'm never one to give up. We'll got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we've got, and apologies for Linda, she's gone to a hearing, this plan change hearing.
And whilst we're not a conflict as well. What? Age-friendly city, you already got.
You just show a bit of respect, mate. Madam Chair, I just want to make a point of order and a complaint against my fellow councillor who's been age abusive to me.
You should declare a conflict, Madam Chair.
Not being age-friendly.
And the mayor in a month's time.
Yeah. I got my gold hop card yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Actually, the three of you together are a bit of a kind of a little...
Oh, that's no way to talk about Councillor Casey.
Getting there.
When do we get our young people hop card?
Yeah, I know. Oh, I don't know whether getting everyone up and moving was a good thing to do.
I think Richard should move the next item.
I've already got a whole cascade of enthusiasm for this one. So I think we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, we've got a quorum back. So welcome back, everybody. Apologies for the quick delay. Our next item is a really positive one, and I'm actually going to ask the Mayor to speak to this, and he's got a very sensible recommendation here. So, Mr. Mayor, looking youthful, young and vital, I might say.
Yeah. Thank Deputy Mayor's just passing me his glasses in case I need them, and really I'm moving this on behalf of my senior colleague, Councillor Ross Clow, who has attained the reputable age of 65 and therefore is a senior and knowledgeable person. Madam
Finally.
Chair.
Keep to the facts.
Yeah, look, I've got no problem with the recommendation on the next item, and we should be, obviously, we want to make Auckland an inclusive city that's friendly and responsive to all people, regardless of age, race, colour, or creed. But I wasn't part of the council when a decision was made not to sign up to the Dublin Declaration, which is the World Health Organisation recommendation for cities to join up to a network of age-friendly cities. And I thought there must have been something in the recommendation that made it not possible for council to be part of it. So I went back and I read the Dublin Declaration, which I've got in front of me, but actually it commits us, if we become part of it, where it's within our area of responsibility and economically feasible to implement the following actions. And it's basically things like promoting general public awareness of older people, their rights, their needs, their potentials, ensure the views of opinions of older people are valued and listened to. I've been through, there's 8 of them, and I don't see a single one of those recommendations that every individual around this table wouldn't agree to. It is a message of respect for older people. There's currently 725,000 people over the age of 65 in New Zealand, but that'll go up by another 500,000 within the next 20 years. So the older section of our community is a large and growing section of it, and the difficulty when I talk to a lot of people who are retired, they feel that suddenly they become unheard and invisible. Partly it's when you opt out of the workforce and suddenly you just don't have that social network. And, my view is that a lot of people around this table, when they reach the grand age of 65, will want to keep working. And I think that's good. But I think that we should acknowledge the principles and the vision set out in the Dublin Declaration, I was at a meeting with Councillor Casey, who's been kind enough to second the amendment that I'm moving to this, and Tracy Martin, the Minister for Voluntary Groups and Seniors, indicated the government's support and the potential maybe for funding of an age-friendly cities network. And I think if, you know, we need to set these goals and these principles up in front of us. So what I'm suggesting is, and it's a pretty mild amendment, it's that we should ask our officers to report back to our June meeting when they're reporting back on their wider study as to whether there are any obstacles to Auckland signing up to becoming an age-friendly city. So I'm advancing very cautiously on this, but personally, having read the declaration, having looked at the application form, I see no obstacle. And further, I see that Hamilton is an age-friendly city, Tauranga is an age-friendly city, Wellington is an age-friendly city. There's a half a dozen of them. And I'd hate to see Auckland out there on a limb saying, oh, this is a step too far, maybe it's too difficult, but not actually saying why. I don't think there is a difficulty in signing up to this. I think it's something that all of us should properly endorse, and as a result, I'm asking you to consider the amendment that I'm moving as a recommendation B. I just read it out to you. Report back to the June meeting of the Environment and Community Committee on any obstacles to Auckland becoming an age-friendly city as part of the World Health Organisation Global Network. And that is seconded by Councillor Casey, who may wish to speak to it.
I would love to speak to it. Okay, we're just, I guess, councillors, we had a very surprising and rather odd debate back when this all first came up, and it kind of all went pear-shaped. I still don't quite understand why. I'm hoping I've got Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Casey, and hopefully we can just can put it, because it will be coming back to June, and I'm very keen that it'll be come back to July. Oh, we might just need to change it to July.
July would be fine.
Because reminding everyone, we do have a workshop coming up. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And may I say, I think that all of the councillors sitting around the table will certainly want to sign up to an age-friendly city. At the time of that vote, there was, I think, quite a lot of conflict around some of the decisions that had been taken by council that for some, and I'm speaking for myself on the council at that time, felt were not age-friendly. The decision to open up swimming pools free to under 16s was one that was quite controversial, because there was a strong advocacy from Councillor Quacks, who's not here today, and myself, around whether that should have also been extended, because swimming is such a vital part of health for older New Zealanders. There were a whole range of things that had gone through that were not age-friendly, and the way that the matter was promoted at the time, I think wasn't clear about how it would, in a practical sense, flow down to those activities that we wanted to see made available to older New Zealanders. There was also a bit of a concern because there wasn't clarity around what the cost of associating ourselves with the World Health on this might be. If we could have clarity on that today and be absolutely clear that it's not imposing further costs, I think it's a wonderful thing that we could progress with that. But I would like, in adopting this, for us to be really clear that it will require us then to analyse all of our policies, particularly in the area of sports and recreation, that we are truly being age-friendly and we're not just giving lip service to this. So I hope that all of the colleagues around the table can support this today. I think it would be helpful, and no doubt, I'm just trying to, I always struggle to read up on the screen here, but I believe that the Mayor is saying that this be reported back, and presumably there would be more information at that stage on what the cost of association. But I support this. I think it's a good idea, and I hope we can do a lot more to make Auckland a place that is affordable and accessible for all Aucklanders, but most particularly for older Aucklanders.
Awesome. Last quick word, Councillor Casey.
This is for Janet and David and Judy and Roger and Mary and all the members of the seniors panel who are sitting at a television screen right now watching this. What the Mayor has done is asked for a report on objections to becoming a World Health Organization age-friendly city. It's going to be a short report of 2 words: no objections. There should be no objections. There's no objections to this at all. And I don't know why we're not doing it today, but July's as good. July's as good as it comes. We need to do due process, and you're a process person, Desley.
Okay.
So it is coming back. But I do want to talk about, we have to look back at what happened. Every single time you have heard from the seniors panel, you've heard them ask for this. Why is it important? The Mayor's outlined most of the reasons. It's about raising visibility. It's about 1 in 10 Aucklanders are over the age of 65. It's about saying, you matter. We want to take your needs into account, not everybody else's needs, your needs. And that's why at the moment when the Local Government magazine did a feature on what councils were doing for the older populations, we weren't in it. But a number of councils were, and the Mayor's mentioned a few of them. I'd like to be on that list. They looked at Taronga, Hamilton, Horowhenua, Kapiti, Wellington and Nelson. Why aren't we in there? Because we ain't doing enough, folks. And what this commitment is today from the Mayor is that it's about time we did do it. And that political decision back in 2016, probably one of the main reasons it didn't go ahead, and it was a split vote, and Chairman George Wood, if you were watching, it was your casting vote that put this asunder. I'll never forgive you for that, George. But just look at the date of that meeting. It was the 8th of May, it was the 1st of September 2016. A couple of weeks later was a historic election. And one of the staff recommendations, and no disrespect to the staff, but they have to do this job, one of the risks was this may be premature in relation to the incoming council. And you know the thing, Phil, about not making big decisions before the new council comes in? That was written down 2 or 3 times, and it was said out loud at that meeting. So it was a political decision, and I think it's time to revisit it. And that's all I want to say. You'll make the seniors panel extremely happy, as will you make every person over the age of 60 in Auckland, because it's time has come. In fact, it's time is long overdue. Yes, Michael, and you're one of them too. Yeah.
I'll be happy.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
I'm looking forward to it.
We need more happy 60-year-olds. Some
So
of us
looking
aren't
forward to
quite
that
there yet.
report, the report that says no objections. Yeah?
No, we're doing the whole thing. We're just going to put the
No,
vote.
no, I'm looking forward to that report coming in
sorry.
July
Yep.
that
Oh.
says no objections.
It's not objections. It's more just saying, how do we make sure
Obstacles,
this happens?
no obstacles.
Yeah.
No obstacles.
Okay, good time to put this. I'll put that
Through you, Madam
recommendation. Oh,
Aye.
Wanted to speak briefly,
briefly,
and,
please.
and that is really just around this phrasing of B, where it's just reporting on obstacles. Now, sure, there may be obstacles, but equally, there are a whole lot of
Advantages.
and I would think advantages.
Yeah.
So I would hope that it's not just obstacles, and I question whether we want to put obstacles in there. I mean, somebody reading this would look at it and they'd think, gee, they're looking for the reasons to knock this. When in fact,
That's
I
a
would
good
hope
point,
that that is not the case. But that's what you would pick out from reading it.
All right.
So
Why don't-
I don't know
I can
why we
amend
don't just eliminate
Advantages and
obstacles.
Okay,
disadvantages.
let's not make a meal of this
Yeah.
and overthink it. I think we can just change that word and turn it to the positive.
Can we just speak, just speaking to that, I'm happy to amend it accordingly, that on the advantages and any obstacles too. And
done.
why I've put obstacles too is obviously if there were major financial implications involved in this, we need to know about that. So it is a cautious approach.
Happy with
but
that.
advantages and obstacles.
Awesome. I'm going to bank
As a
that. and I'm
seconder,
gonna-
can I just agree to that, but
Yeah.
say, why don't you just bring back the report that went to the meeting of the 1st of September? Because
We,
that had
um,
everything in it. And nothing has changed,
become-
except there are more age-friendly cities now than there were back then.
Deep breath, Councillor Casey.
Take it to the vote,
Share,
Madam Chair.
believe you me,
Councillors.
I share the frustration. We've made a big meal of this. Some of us would like to have just done this today. I had a very
65,
brief
baby.
report which said just bring the options back. The Mayor has expanded this and made it clearer. Let's just do it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Good. moving on.
Report back to Janet.
Regional Sport and Rec Grants Program. Now, I know Sir John has quite rightly declared a conflict of interest with what we fondly call FIFOD, so Find Your Field of Dreams Foundation. And I'll just ask the team to take us through the grants program. We have discussed this at length. Right, thank you.
Morning. Just introduce myself. I'm Dave Stewart, Manager of Sport and Recreation. And to my right, I have Geraldine Wilson, who's Investment Advisor within the Sport and Recreation team. This report seeks the approval for the allocation through the funding of the Regional Sport and Rec Grants Program to 8 recommended applications outlined in this report. These applications have been assessed for eligibility against the Community Grants Policy of 2014 and assessed against the Assessment Matrix criteria, which incorporates the Pilot Outcome Measurement Tool. The applications were also discussed, as the Chair has mentioned, at the Environment and Community Committee workshop last month on the 5th of April. 28 applications were received, requesting a total of $1.5 million with an available funding pool of $508,000. Of the 28 applications received, 8 were considered strongly aligned, 11 partially aligned, and 9 not aligned to the Community Grants Policy 2014. This was also looked at through the lens of the Auckland Sport and Recreation Strategic Action Plan. Staff will support organisations whose applications are ultimately unsuccessful by encouraging them to seek other funding options, such as local board, local grants, or working with them to develop their application for future years. The grants program supports regional sport and recreation organisations to deliver regional programs through the allocation of grants for operational project costs. The grants program also supports all Auckland's diverse communities wherever in the region they may live. The purpose of the grants program is to provide or support easier and more affordable access to populations with low participation rates in sport and recreation, particularly Maori, children and young people, populations with health and wellbeing needs, those facing other barriers such as transport and information. The grants program seeks to enable sustainable organisations and initiatives whilst avoiding organisations becoming financially dependent on Auckland Council. The 8 strongly aligned applications are the Auckland Basketball Services Limited Free Ballers Program, which uses outdoor basketball spaces to grow junior participation. It's an innovative program which I guess removes some of the cost prohibitive issues with indoor court facilities and hopes to reach youth that would otherwise not be involved in the sport. The Blind Foundation's Community Life Enrichment Program, which includes partnering with other disability groups, increasing accessibility to local clubs and groups, increasing confidence in activities, growth in youth leadership, training and developing volunteers, and the evaluation of the program. The John Walker Find Your Field of Dreams organisation, or known as FIFOD, there's 7 initiatives, 7 programs under this mantle: the Community Swim, Primary Sport, Blend Sport for visually impaired youth, the Youth Leadership Program, the Run, Jump and Throw for Gold program, the Throw for Gold and Lift in the west, and also Lift for Gold in the south. The Auckland Paraplegic and Physically Disabled Association, known as Parafed, is applying for funding to provide hubs of activity for youth and access to events and games. The project includes a kids club for 5 to 11-year-old youth, and also basic sports skills and youth club for 12 to 17-year-olds to develop leadership skills through outdoor recreation. Netball Northern have a junior netball program branded Future Ferns. This work will work with 15 netball sites to provide quality junior netball opportunities, coaching workshops, skill development within 20 schools, professional development for the teachers, and program management, communication, promotion and coordination. Actives Hiranga Potama, or HOP, includes 2 main programs for Maori and non-Maori: youth leadership and building capacity of Maori sports organisations, which includes providing a staff member to support their needs. Active's Active Asian program, which includes increasing the hours of 4 part-time Active Asian community coordinators across the 4 regional sports trusts or partners to deliver Active Asian volunteer program. This includes walk leader training, extension of the spike, spin, smash, shoot programs, and increasing the digital marketing using platforms like WeChat. And finally, Hockey New Zealand, which is a wider regional hockey program, participation program, seeking a contribution to community, operational costs for the junior hockey programs, including Small Sticks, the winter and summer hockey, Renegade hockey, and a pilot Seek community program.
Awesome, thanks Dave. Anything to add, Geraldine? No? Councillor Philippina, you're happy to move?
Yep.
And do I have...
Oh, Madam Chair, I was just putting my hand up to say I would be happy to move it or second it, and in so doing, saying we will always have many more applications, but I think the criteria is really good. I know how much work goes by staff into doing the metrics to ensure that this is done in accordance with the criteria that we have set, and I think they've done an excellent job, and I was happy to support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Simpson and then Councillor Watson.
Thank you, and thank you for your analysis. This is really good. Could you please explain when we get the feedback from organisations that we have regionally funded in the past, where do we get the outcomes of that funding and the success of the programs and what we've done to meet our objectives? When do we get coverage of that?
Sure. So this program is for the next financial year. So at the we have 6 monthly reporting. Right. So we receive 6 monthly progress reports, which release future payments, and then we'll receive end of year reporting against the KPIs within each of the funding agreements we have with the organisations.
So for the current ones that are currently funded, we'll get that when?
We did report at I think it was September last year, on the last 3 rounds of funding, and for this current round of funding that's happening, we can report at the end of this calendar year.
Okay. My question is just, it's really nice to know what we've funded before and how successful that is, especially when some of the same organisations are applying this time. And my second question is around that. So we've obviously got some organisations that are achieving the success in getting funding on an annual basis. Do you see this as having a number of organisations that will do that for a long time, or is your objective to potentially wean those organisations off council funding and then get a new lot of regional ones through?
The intent is to support organisations to seek sustainability outside of council funding. You're right, there are organisations that have received funding year on year for a period of time. We're having conversations with a number of organisations around how they can build sustainability and other funding under other funding channels to be able to continue to support their programs, so we can continue to reach more organisations and more Aucklanders. So
what is the length of time you think that an organisation would receive council funding before you sort of said, well, hold on, no, that's enough? Are there any guidelines around that, or your objectives that you're looking towards? Is it 5 years or 3 years or?
2 years.
There's provision within the community grants policy for partnership funding through multiple years, which we would typically look at 3 years. We have not recommended any partnership funding. So I guess it probably is on a case-by-case basis. But sort of when we see multiple years, that's something we'll continue to look at with those organisations.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, Councillor, the critical point is what are we achieving with that money, and the cases are different, and if there's no one else providing that outcome, then it may be a decade-long funding. I've got Councillor Watson and then Councillor Philippina.
You've made my point, which is what we're achieving.
Great. Councillor Watson, then Councillor Casey, then we'll put the recommendation. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask a question about the context in terms of some of the groups identified with low participation rate, and particularly Maori. I just wondered to what extent, I'm not quite sure where the figures come from, in the sense that Maori in a number of codes have the highest participation rate of anyone, way and above anyone else. So if we go to rugby league, if we increasingly go to any rugby in Auckland, whether it's club rugby or school rugby, if we go to codes like softball, netball, it's in the case of codes like rugby league, it's almost entirely Maori or Polynesian. That seems contradictory, and I know where the statistics are probably coming from. What sort of balance do we strike in kind of making those statements? Because it seems to me we're in some ways we're doing Maori a disservice, especially I think of the huge big clubs that that cater for a big proportion of the population, not just their players, but all the associated activities that go with them, in particular the league clubs.
No.
How do we reconcile those two, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Sure. So the criteria and the guidelines for this this funding opportunity is through multiple lenses. One is for low participation communities, and then we look through a number of other lenses as well, like the youth, and Maori is one of them. Ultimately, it's a population group that does have some low participation trends in some areas, and so obviously programs that can reach the various Maori communities are advantageous. I do take your point around the high participation rates in other codes as well.
I guess I'm just as a signal. I think it's important to to acknowledge that in huge numbers of codes, the Maori and Polynesian have higher participation rates than anyone else, and deserve recognition for that. Not kind of the slight almost as if they're not. And I'm not saying that's in the report, but that is something that comes through in a lot of the statistics we deal with. Whereas when you look at it on the ground, it's actually quite a different picture in many of these codes.
I think, yeah, and I understand what you're saying, Councillor Watson. I think the issue, though, if you look, we've got here Oranga Potama, we've got some of our Māori leadership groups, we've got some organisations, and I know out west with a, high Māori community and low participation rates in some sports and sporting activity areas. This is about trying to gap fill, not deal with some of those big mainstream sports. There are other avenues for those, so I think this is trying to strike that balance. But your point's understood. I've got Councillor Casey, and then we'll move to the recommendations.
Yeah, I'm just interested in the process by which we've got 20 applications and we've got 11 that are partially aligned. So those 11 organisations applied to us. What's the process for them getting feedback? Do you have a priority chart when you assess all the applications? You've got number 1 and number 28.
Not quite to that level. We don't rank them in order. Through the pilot program for the outcome measurement tool, we've had a robust process for being able to measure the outcomes and the benefits to community of each of the programs that have put in forward submissions. So the process has been that staff have, used the various lenses to assess the applications, and then the question and way of feedback, we will speak with each of the applicants to give them feedback on their applications, and like I mentioned in my narrative, we'll work with them to be able to identify other opportunities that there may be to be able to receive further grant funding through other programs.
So you can tell them how to leap from being partially aligned to being strongly aligned. That's the feedback you give them.
Yes, absolutely. There's probably at least 5 or 6 organisations within that category that I'm very keen to work with and invite them in and talk through their application and where the gaps are and where they need to identify links to increase participation. So that's going to be a big part of my job in the next month or so.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just before I put the recommendation, I do invite members, if you haven't done so already, to read the huge list of people who applied. It gives you a sense of the unmet need, and as we go into the LTP, I strongly urge us to bring this list with us. We are simply falling behind in our provision of services to allow our community to be active and to take care of their own well-being by participating in informal or sporting activities. I think it's something that we need to address urgently. So I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All against? Carried. Thank you. But now onto something, and thank you to the staff. That was a kind of a bit of a gut-wrenching piece of work to sift through all of that and find the winning 8. So thank you for your ongoing work with our communities on this. But on to something positive.